it a mistake? Was it a mistake to go to war with Iraq?
It wasn't.
I'm asking you just.
Yeah, I understand, but that's not the same question.
But that's the question I'm asking you. Was it a mistake to go to...
It was not a mistake for the president to decide to go into Iraq because at the time he was told...
I'm not asking you that. I'm asking you...
In hindsight.
Yes.
No, the world is a better place because Saddam Hussein is not there.
So was
I
it a
wouldn't
mistake
characterize it. But I don't understand the question you're asking.
I'm asking you, knowing everything, as we sit here in 2015...
But that's not the way presidents don't... A president cannot make a decision on what someone might know in the future.
But that's what I'm asking you. Was it a mistake?
It was not a mistake for the president to go into Iraq based on the information he was provided as president.
You know, it really is like an Abbott Costello routine there. It really is. And joining us now is Ari Fleischer, former White House spokesman, of course, for President George W. Bush, president of Fleischer Sports. Ari, welcome. And you know, this badgering of the Republican presidential hopefuls over, you know, over this question and rephrasing the question and paraphrasing the question and asking it again. I mean, I don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, why don't they ask, would you prefer for Saddam Hussein to be in power? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Do you want Saddam Hussein to be in power? Why won't you give me an... Yeah, I really don't understand it either. You know, I do think it's fair to say, did George Bush make a mistake? But when somebody asks that hypothetical, hindsight question, was it a mistake? It is an impossible question to answer. And I think, frankly, Marco Rubio, I know some are criticizing him for it.
No, he handled it well.
Did a fine job answering it.
Yeah, I think he did as well. Now, Bush, of course, you would have thought, you know, he was the first one to get it, and you would have thought he'd be the first one to get it, and you would have thought he would think he'd be the first one to get it. And not only did he, and I really believe he misheard the question based on how he answered it, saying, you know, bringing up Hillary and the others. But going forward, he kept changing the answer. And
right.
How could he not? How could his people, Ari, have not have prepared him for that?
Look, I've been saying this for years as George Bush's spokesman, who was the one who went to the podium and repeatedly said that Saddam had weapons of mass destruction. I don't think we would have gone to war with Iraq if the CIA had not concluded he had weapons of mass destruction. I just don't think that would have happened. And I think you can say that. I think people should say that. And I do think that any president, particularly after 9/11, who was told that Saddam had WMD, would have reached the same conclusion George Bush did.
Yeah, no, I agree with you to a great extent. Well, let me ask you this, though, and this is kind of a sidetrack. I'm sidetracking myself here. Why did the administration in later years after the war and even, or after the invasion, I should say, as the war went on and it became unpopular, and even now, I mean, I know George W. Bush doesn't speak much about politics, although he did once the other day. I mean, we found you know, indications that he was ready to reconstitute or was planning to reconstitute his WMDs. We know that there was Al-Qaeda presence there to a certain extent. We know that some of our soldiers were injured by chemical weapons, albeit they were old chemical weapons and outdated. So, I mean, that was written about in the New York Times and the Washington Post not too recently. I mean, not too long ago, fairly recently. So, why not a better defense of why it was necessary to go in, instead of allowing everyone, including, of course, the media, to think, oh, what a colossal mistake to go in?
Because what we stated to the public was that Saddam had stockpiles of chemical and biological weapons, had an active program and had stockpiles, and that's what turned out to be wrong. So when I saw those New York Times stories about the old chemical munitions, I thought, could this be what we were talking about? And it wasn't.
Right.
And that's why I think you saw a lot of people not jump all over that story and say, aha, Bush was right.
Yeah.
We were wrong about Saddam having weapons of mass destruction.
Right.
But what bothers me the most, though, is the puerile argument that some make about Bush lied. We always told what we were told by the CIA. There was no cherry picking. It was a faithful reporting of what the CIA concluded. And we weren't the only ones. The French intelligence thought it.
Oh, everybody,
Thought it. Everybody thought it. Bill Clinton thought it.
And Tommy Franks' book, if I'm not mistaken, The King of Jordan, said to him, you better have those guys dressed in chemical weapon suits because he's going to use them.
And they were dressed in chemical weapons. That's how seriously we suits, because we seriously thought that's what they were going to be greeted with. So, you know, that's the one thing that bothers me the most. And people think that, and especially people who are just not thinking about what the truth was. They are the ones who are lying, frankly.
Well, let me ask you about
CIA Director Mike Morell's book, former acting director and deputy director, he just came out and said the same thing. This was a top Obama aide who said that Bush didn't need to embellish anything. He reported what the CIA concluded.
And we have to have Mr. Morell on tomorrow, as a matter of fact. But let me ask you about George Stephanopoulos. What are the ethics here, Ari, in your opinion? And not only did he make the contributions and admitted it only after he grilled Peter Schweitzer as acting as an advocate and defense attorney for the Clinton Foundation, but then it turns out he did a lot more work and has done a lot more work in different capacities with the Clinton Foundation, so it keeps getting worse and worse. What's your take on this whole thing?
It's part of why Republicans and conservatives just scratch their heads and say there's bias in the media, because there is. It's because George Stephanopoulos' bosses actually think he's independent when he's not, and that's the problem. You know, the other thing, let alone the ethics of his contributions, when he issued his statement saying he was going to withdraw from the debate, the New York Times reported after he said that he already had been told, and ABC had been told, he wasn't going to host a debate. He wasn't going to be a moderator.
Huh.
So he puts out a statement saying he was going to withdraw from something he was never invited to moderate in the first place.
Should he be suspended? Should he be kicked off of the elite anchorship of the coverage of the elections going forward? What do you think?
Well, I just think viewers need to look at George Stephanopoulos and say he is not an independent journalist. He is not. He remains, to his core, to be a Democratic partisan. And that's the problem. He can do a good job occasionally asking hard questions of Democrats, but that is not an excuse for the things we don't know, that we now know, that he's doing behind the scenes.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Couldn't agree. We got 15 seconds. Are you surprised by A-Rod's success? I mean, how the heck's he doing it if he's clean?
Oh, goodness. I'll be going to my first game next month, and I just can't bring myself to applaud.
All right,
I hope he hits home runs because I want to win, but I won't applaud.
All right, I want you come back before then, but then after then you give me your analysis on why he's doing so well. Ari Fleischer, great to talk to you, my friend.
Thanks, Steve.
All right, we're coming back, folks. Don't go away.